if you like mucking around with your damping a lot, or choosing specific damping settings on your Tiger 1200, there's a couple of things you can do. You can customize every rider mode. You can customize the damping setting in every rider mode, or as most riders know of a Generation 3 or TSAS equipped Tiger, you can just adjust the damping on the fly as you're going along in any rider mode. But I'll show you the difference between the two settings. You can totally disassociate your damping with your rider modes if you wish. And that way, wherever you leave your damping, that's the way it's going to be. There's nothing fancy about the damping, electronic damping on this bike at all. There's nothing intelligent or semi-active or anything about that. That's just a load of rubbish. No, I'm not going to say that. That's not really true in everyday driving. That's what I should say. All I'm doing when I'm changing the damping on this is exactly what I'd be doing on this. When you change the damping, there's my screwdriver, or where's egg screwdriver? When I change the damping, oh, there's a nice one. On my Gen 3 Tiger, that's 2018 to present day 2020, all I'm doing is that. Making it harder or softer. That's it. Ignore that, that's preload. You don't even get that on the 2020 Tiger 1200. There's no preload adjustment on the front of Tiger 1200. So all I'm doing when I'm pressing the electronic button, all it's doing is this for me. That's it. There's nothing more active about that suspension on that Gen 3 Tiger 1200 than that. There's one exception, and I'll just mention that briefly at the end, but it's of no consequence. So that's me rebound damping. And down here, I got my compression damping. That's it. So, when I change the damping setting on here, what Triumph have done on this model is used a compression damping on one leg and rebound damping on the other leg. And all I have is an actuator on the top of the forks. There's no adjustment down below on there. It's all done one on one fork, one on the other fork. Same on the rear shock. There's rebound damping, there's no compression damping. Same on my bike here. I just have rebound damping, and it's I turn the lever. That's all that's happening on that bike up there as well. So, the electronics on a Tiger 1200 are just convenience tools, really. They're actually not anything fancy, but they're brilliant in their simplicity. The only extra thing that's manual on this bike is, okay, I have preload for my rear shock here as well, which is a nut. On the Tiger 1200, brilliantly, and I will say it's brilliant. Oh, I can't get through the gap. Here we are. There's a swing arm position sensor under here, and it's linked to a rod to the rear swing arm. The more weight you put on the bike, this position sensor feeds back that weight and sets the rear preload for you. It's absolutely brilliant. It's brilliantly simple. It doesn't change the damping for you though, based on you sitting on that. That's something you still do yourself. Right, there isn't a single Triumph Tiger 1200 owner that doesn't know that when you're in any riding mode, you can just go to your damping settings on your information tray on the bottom there and raise the damping to a firm level or all the way down to the softest level, and that's affecting the front and the rear shock, and you can change that on the fly regardless of whatever riding mode is. But when you do that, you are doing that in the current rider mode you're in. So you are kind of customizing your rider mode you're in there. And when you switch off the bike, go away, and when you come back, that damping setting will stay in that rider mode. Now I'm only at the first position of the ignition, so I don't have a rider mode selected at the moment. But, oh, great. Okay, thank you. Right, I'm in my road mode. Yep, okay, low fuel. I'm in my road mode. So now, if I put my road mode up to full firm damping towards the sporty end, the next time I get on this bike, whether it's a day away, a week away, or whenever, the damping will remain at this high level in my road mode. I've actually customized that rider mode. So when you're changing this damping, you're actually customizing your rider mode. So have a look at this. I'm all the way up in full sport. Now if I go back and check out my riding modes, and I was in regular road then, and I have a look at my settings, on-road settings, there you are. You can see I'm at full sport in this. So when you're changing that on that information tray at the bottom, you're actually changing the damping setting in your actual rider mode. So you've customized your actual rider mode. But I can just use the same joystick and go back to where it used to be, normal. And as long as I push the joystick in and select that, then come out of this and go back, and you can see I've reset my rider mode damping back to normal. Now again, you can always reset everything to defaults if you made an arse of everything. So you can see, look down here. So you play away to your heart's content, but you can reset everything back to your defaults, ABS and traction control and everything like that. So again, we know sport, TSAS, on-road settings. Here's my damping in sport. So that's the default value from Triumph for sport mode. So you've got one more you can increase it by if you wish. And as long as I acknowledge that by pushing the joystick in, I go back, and now I change to a sport rider mode. Okay, you can see my damping is all the way up to max. So when you adjust the damping here, you're adjusting it directly in your rider mode, and it'll stay that way in its rider mode. If you're someone who likes to change your rider modes a lot though, but maybe wants to keep your damping the same, so maybe you want a bit more of a snappy throttle response, but you still want a soft or a firm rider mode, what you can do is disassociate your damping with any rider mode. So if I go to setup, rider modes, no, bike setup, TSAS, riding modes link, I disable that. So now my damping is totally independent of rider modes. So disable. So now when I change this damping, it doesn't matter what rider mode I go. So I'm going to go full, no, let's go, whoops, let's go full comfort. And then we'll change the rider mode, and we'll go to, oops, we'll go to, here, will you give up? We'll go to off-road, which I know to be, no, let's go to sport, which I know to be a firmer setting. And here we are, I'm in sport mode, damping's not changed, change another mode. Damping hasn't changed, change another mode. In the custom rider mode, damping hasn't changed. So you can change your individual damping setting in your rider modes. You can change your damping in a particular rider mode that you're in at the time, and it will stay with that rider mode regardless of how many times you switch the bike off. Or you can totally disassociate damping from rider modes. Cool. So you could say, right, I'm going on tour, I've got a bit of luggage, I'm going for a bit of a leisurely pace, you know, have my suspension somewhere set, disassociate your damping, keep it somewhere down on the comfort setting, but I do like to change my rider modes, maybe for rain, for less power, you know, maybe back for road, but I want to keep my damping setting the same all the time. You've got a bit of a bad back, maybe, whatever the reason might be, you can disassociate, but you do like using rider modes. Just disassociate your damping from your rider modes and just change that as you want it, regardless of what rider mode you're in. I mean, ideally, the idea is that, okay, if you're going to sport mode, you'll want firmer damping because you're expecting to be driving a bit sportier and a bit faster around corners maybe, and braking a bit harder. But in reality, maybe you just like the throttle response or the throttle movement on sport mode, but you still want regular damping because you're not tearing up the streets. So that's how you can disassociate damping from a rider mode, or customize every rider mode to be a different damping setting from the one Triumph set for you. Cheers. Now, I did say I'd mention an anomaly with the suspension. Well, not an anomaly. The reason why Triumph gets semi-active in the suspension is in certain conditions, if it thinks you're going down a really bumpy road, it'll change the damping. It won't change your bike to off-road mode, it'll change your damping. So look, we know the damping is quite firm in sport mode. If I go to the setup, bike setup, and this is the mode I'm in at the moment, sport mode, I go to TSAS, TSAS mode set to auto, and my on-road settings, and this is my firm suspension as I normally have in my tray. But you notice there's an off-road setting here as well, and that's much lower, much less damping. It's actually back down to normal. So if this notices me going down a really bumpy road and it lasts for a few seconds, I'm not sure exactly how many seconds that is, but it could be up to about 10 seconds. If that bumpy road lasts for a while, what it does is it automatically reduces the damping. Or what I should say, it automatically changes the damping to where Triumph have it set by default. So, for instance, if I had comfort setting set for my normal damping for my sport mode, I mean you wouldn't, but if I did, and you came across a bumpy road, it'll actually increase my damping and go to normal. Let's have a look at another riding mode. So if I change my riding mode, and let's go to, say, rain mode. Okay, and now, if I go to bike setup, this is my TSAS setting in my rain mode. So it's auto, as I said before. On-road setting, well, we know rain mode, the damping is set to quite a comfort level, as normal. But my off-road settings are set to normal. So in each riding mode here, Triumph have set the off-road damping settings to normal. So if it notices you're on a really bumpy road, that's where it sets the damping. Now you can customize that, you can change that, but this happens so infrequently. Like you really just have to be going up a really bad road. Now, if you were going up a really bad road for any length of time, you'd change into an off-road mode, you know. So that's where they get the term semi-active from. I mean, you'll virtually never use it, you know. It's probably kicked in 2 or 3 times on me. But in normal day-to-day riding, you wouldn't notice the difference. And that's just off-road damping settings. It does nothing to the preload. When you go in off-road mode on this bike, it's brilliant. The rear preload backs right off and lowers the rear end, giving your front end some more stability. That's not what this is doing. That's not what the off-road TSAS setting is doing here. You can see on the screen here, that's my TSAS level that we were just looking at, auto. So in other words, change my damping settings if I come across a bumpy road. But it could be going up or down, depending on which rider mode you're in the first place. That's why they can say the suspension is semi-active, but really it's a crock of shit. I think the suspension on this bike is absolutely brilliant, but in day-to-day riding, there's nothing semi-active about it at all. But it is brilliant suspension. That's that explained anyway, hopefully. Cheers.